Hello! How is everybody? Where is my chat? Simon, how are we doing? Just give me a second to try and pull my chat out on here. I don't think it's going to be possible. Nope. Not going to work. How are we all doing today? It's raining. I'm so happy. I absolutely hate this weather. It's horrible. The hot sun, not the rain. I love the rain. It's been way too hot. How is everyone handling the heat? Johnny, how we doing? Who else is here? SM, how we doing? Alexander, how we doing? I can't keep the chat up. It's really annoying. Why can't I pop the chat out? Hot in Ireland, never. It's been very hot. Horribly hot. How is everyone doing? How are you handling the weather? Because I certainly like not handling it nice. Rain in England, yeah. 30 odd degrees it was. 32 degrees I think. Igor, how we doing? Is what it was here a few days ago. And like 28, 29 all the other times. Just too hot. 98, yeah. What's that in English? Like 30 degrees, is it? Just waiting for the ghostly face behind you. Yeah, what's 34-ish? Yeah, I thought it was in around. Yeah, that's too hot. That's horrible. You can't work in that. And when I say to people it's too hot and you can't work it, oh, you're miserable, you're this, you're that, blah blah blah. It's nothing to do with that. It's just too bloody hot. If you're cold, you just put a jacket on. You can make yourself warm. If you're too hot, there's nothing you can do. And then when a car comes in and the engine's bloody, 80 and 90 odd degrees, that's no, too much. Just way too much. Dave, how we doing? Lawrence, how we doing? Thanks a lot, mate. Yeah, just way too hot. Way too hot. So what's everyone doing today? I'm just waiting for a few things and then I can finish off my day. Got to do a bit of welding. Leon the naked mechanic. Could you imagine? 2 big thunderstorms not far from Manchester. Yeah, bring on the thunderstorms, bring on the rain. That's what I say. That's what I say. Stuff this fucking hot sun. Terrible. If you're not working and at a beach, okay, fair enough. But when you're working, no, it's just no good. No good at all. What's everyone been up to? Are you working today? You got a day off? I'm just looking at the clouds outside and it's still black, which is great. Oh, it's great. Love it. Absolutely love it. Chance of fish and chips. I've got a 15-foot pool in the back garden sorted. Yeah, that's what you need. That's what you need. Not good when the electric goes out or intermittent. Yeah, but it's not good when you can't do anything either. Even at night, so many people I was speaking to were struggling sleeping because it was just too hot. It's just horrible. It's draining. Paint in the bathroom, pads and discs in a Civic. Nice. Seasoned Defender. What's wrong with you? I'm loving the way. Yeah, you're maybe more used to it, Igor, though. It's horrible. It's horrible. Lee, how we doing? Is the van still going? It is, Dave. Still going. Haven't bought Mercedes yet. Still going. So yeah. Air conditioning. If it wasn't for air conditioning, I would be dead. Fun fact, store number 3 rolling in. And please send me to Ireland. They might be... Hold on, it's going to go out of me. Might be okay when they're here. Surely the old engine's to fuck around with. How many engines? It's on its 5th in a week. Oh, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. So what's everyone been at? Hello, I've been DIY for a few years now. I'm going to become a tech and work in a shop. May I ask for any advice? Well, it just depends what sort of shop I suppose you're working at and what sort of things you're going to be doing, because and depends what sort of tools you've got, because like everything, the tools is the most expensive part of this job. And you can save a fortune, you know, buying second-hand tools. If you're going for sockets and stuff like that, always buy why is the word completely gone out of my head? Impact sockets. Because an impact socket you can use in an impact gun and also, you know, on a hand ratchet. You don't have to buy, you know, the shiny ones and then the impact ones. It costs more. So little things like that can help. Second-hand tools, like I said, can help. And if you can get a good guy that's in the garage that's willing to actually show you things, which can be quite difficult depending on how busy the garage is, that can obviously help. YouTube videos, you know, there's lots of good YouTube videos out there as well. So yeah, and yeah, that's it really. I mean, I don't know what type of advice you want. So if you give me a bit more idea, I might be able to give you a bit more, but it's the tools that are gonna kill everyone. And also, I think that took me a while to figure out is don't rely on people too much. Now what I mean by that is, yes, you can ask questions and, you know, you can ask people to check your work over once you're done. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, but don't rely on that. Once you've done, you know, pads and discs a few times, you're going to be able to do pads and discs. It's not going to be an issue. Slightly different in certain cars, but essentially the same. If you keep relying on that person after you know you can do a simple job like that to keep looking over your shoulder and telling you you've done okay, it's very, very difficult to come away and kind of take you know, try and get away from that. And you're going to be constantly, oh, is this okay, is this okay, is this okay? And you're going to be in your head, you're going to think you can only do the job if someone says it's okay afterwards. So try and get that out your head quite quickly. Once you know you can do a certain job, like a timing belt is a timing belt. Some are more awkward than others, but essentially it's the same on all cars. Brake pads, it's the same on all cars. Servicing, you know, petrol and diesel, it's practically the same. So once you've kind of got that nailed down, don't rely on the person to come over your head and say, yeah, look, you've done okay, because you will constantly be relying on that person. And if you're doing a job, you know, in your own time and at your house and stuff, and then you're finished, you're going to be, well, I need that guy to tell me it's okay, and that can kind of fuck you up. So yeah. Will the Cosworth be going Tesla 650 horsepower? Me stripping laptop batteries, lost count after. Will the Cosworth be going Tesla 650 power? Me stripping laptop batteries, lost count. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. It's stuff got more experience down south. It's stuff got more. Oh yeah, lot more expensive. Lot more expensive. Ridiculous. everything's got more expensive, and we're even struggling to get, so like, I'm ordering stuff from the main dealer, and you know, normally you'd get it within a day or a couple of days. Now it's taking a week and a half, and the prices have gone up. I'm getting nailed in customs all the time. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. But I mean, I priced up a map sensor on, or a map sensor on a van. Spurious, it was 150 euros. A main dealer, it was 295 euros. Say 300 euros for the main dealer one. From England, without the import duty and stuff, but just from England, 85 euros for a genuine one. And then even with the import duty was, I think, with the import duty and the and the carriage, it was like 130 euros. So it was still 20 euros cheaper than the Spurious one here. But the problem is, it took 2 weeks to get here. So that's the issue that I'm facing. You know, yes, I can go to England and get parts. If they are wrong, it's a nightmare to send back. But it takes like 2 weeks to get something from the UK now. And most people can't afford to wait that long. So they have to bite the bullet and go for the one that's going to cost them 3 times more. But it's not just me dealing with it. Everyone's dealing with it. And obviously, from the sounds of things, you're dealing with it too. UK has a shortage of lorry drivers at the minute. Greetings from California. How we doing, mate? To what? What's the weather like in California? I couldn't take it. Couldn't hack it. Too hot. Too hot. So yeah, that's the issue at the minute. But Ireland's always been ridiculously expensive anyway. And it's only when people come over here, even from the UK, and they just don't realise how expensive it is. It is ridiculous. Even just stupid things. You have to experience it. You know, the taxes here are crazy. We need water, mate. There's plenty of water here. Well, it's not pissing it down now, but it was a few minutes ago. But yeah. So yeah, the joys of Brexit. Could be a good idea to store common fault replacement parts. Not really, because just because a part is common to go on a vehicle, how can I explain this? Like, I suppose it all depends where you live. If you're in a city, you know, you'll see, like, for example, you know, you might have 50 Passats on your book. You might have 30 Mondeos on your books. You might, you know, where me, for example, I'm trying to think now. I have like maybe two Mark IV Mondeos, maybe one Passat, one Golf. Do you know what I mean? I don't get enough of one specific car to do that. It's very difficult. I see such a wide range of cars, you know, and there might be some cars that I've never worked on and the customers got one, if that makes sense, you know. So it was be very difficult to stock common parts, even though if I know a common part is gone, how long would I be waiting on that part, you know, to get rid of it again? So it's kind of yeah, it's just not possible, unfortunately. I have to kind of take each day as it comes, and depending on what car comes in, and go from there, if that makes sense. Hi Leon, do you still use the Foxhole scan tool, or do you have moved on to bigger and better now? I have a similar Foxhole myself recently. I still do use it. I'm going to actually be doing a video on it very soon, because I got contacted by a company. I've never heard of them before, and I normally don't. I get contacted by loads of companies to do kind of the you know, the cheaper scan tools, and I've just done so many of them, and it's a ball ache to do them, to be honest. And once you've seen kind of one cheaper scan tool, they're all more or less the same with just different colors and stuff. So I kind of tend to stay away from them. But this company has contacted me. I've never heard of them before, but they've got a scan tool which, from what I can see, looks reasonably priced, but it's free lifetimes guarantee, like my Foxwell. So free lifetimes update, which for, you know, for the DIYer and stuff would be quite handy, because, you know, as you know, scan tools, Like my Diagon, for example, it's cheaper to buy a new one than it is to pay the updates. Well, it's not, but you know, the updates is just over half the price of buying a new one. So you might as well buy a new one. You might as well use the old one for 2 or 3 years, not update it, and buy a new one because you're going to get the latest memory and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of pointless updating it. In that sense, that particular one. Now, the ones that cost 3 or 4 thousand, that's a different story, but. So yeah, I am going to be doing what I might be doing. I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided, but that might be good because when you kind of hear that it's free updates for life, you know, that can kind of that can swing. You know, you swing into kind of getting that. Do you know? I have asked for advice because I'm not comfortable working on TS engines and BMW engines for what I know. VW petrol engines are a nightmare to work on. Well, every engine has its issues to work on. Every engine does. You know, some engines are easy and others. Diesel engines are just harder to work on because there's less space than the petrol engines, you know, and the gearboxes are heavier and dual max flywheels and all that. So you'll kind of get that even when you start getting comfortable on a specific car. There's going to be awkward parts of that car, and I don't see enough cars. Like I wouldn't build. I don't have like 100 Volkswagen Golfs on my books to kind of do that as well. Now, if you're working a place where they're just like a dealership that just do Volkswagen, Ford, or Toyota, you kind of get used to it a bit more that way. Top Done by any chance? No, it wasn't Top Done. Top Done have contacted me, but it wasn't them. I see where you're coming from. Yeah, 8 common parts of cost effect. Yeah, that's the problem. It's all well and good. It's all well and good, getting the common parts, but they just, yeah, it just doesn't make sense for me anyway. Now, like I said, if I was in a bigger town where you had 30 or 40 of the same cars on your books that you would see in, over the year, okay, granted, it would be kind of worth your while doing it then. But for me, where I am, just not. Top Done seems to be everywhere. And yeah, well, it wasn't Top Done. It wasn't Top Done that I'm talking about at this particular moment. They have contacted me. But it wasn't Top Done. It was. I'm trying to think of the name. I can't think. It looks very. It's a company I've never heard of before, and it looks very similar to the Foxwell. If anything, it's most probably, like a. I don't know, but it looks very similar to the Foxwell, just like a newer version of it. And again, I've got a video coming up soon where I'm. It's Autel and launch. Autel versus launch, so that video is coming up soon. But yeah, it's just, I think with the lifetime's free updates, that's the only reason why I am considering this one, because you can buy a good scan tool fairly cheap. Let's face it, you can buy now, really good scan tools for 500 and 600 quid, which do practically everything within reason. But then once the updates go down, they're like 500 quid to update. But it does more than this other one, of course, because this one's cheaper, but still the updates can be quite expensive. And if you're just doing like code reading, you're just doing common kind of, and it does all the relearn features. So it does DPS, it does the gears, it does throttle bodies, it does injectors, I believe. So it does all the normal the relearn features. It's not bi-directional, I don't think, which can be really handy. There's no two ways about that. But then you're kind of stepping up a tier, and you're normally, not all the time, but from kind of the one where it do the bi-directional controls, it's normally double the price, and that can be sometimes out of people's price range. But I'm still thinking about it. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, Foxwell is still going strong. They've got some of the bigger scan tools out now, like the GT60 or the GT90. I don't know what's out now. I haven't used one of them, but it looks fairly good, but I haven't used one, so I don't know. Top Done is Tom Cruise and that. Thank you, mate. I appreciate it. I have a lot of tools: 12-ton press, bearing press, bushings as scan tool. I use the Foxwell Elite. I think that's the one I've got, isn't it? Or mine? No, mine's the Pro. Yeah, well, you're not going to need things like all the presses and stuff because the garage you're going to should have all that. You're just going to need like hand tools and stuff. Um, yeah, I think Scan Max and a clone of the Delphi DS150. Well, you kind of set there, you know. It's just yeah, you kind of set there then. In that sense, it's not too bad. It's just experience. It's just getting experience, and it's just getting the like I say, you know, where you don't need someone to say yes, okay, you can put your wheel back on, you've done a good job. You want to try and get away from that as fast as possible because that will stay in your head, and you will not, your head won't allow you to move on, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to do because you have to trust yourself, but once you've done, like I said, once you've been there and you're doing the same kind of jobs over and over again, you're going to know yourself. You need to let your head say, I don't need this person to look at this. But it can be kind of scary because even though brakes are a simple job, in the sense of, you know, they're a simple job to do, but if you do them wrong, you can potentially kill someone. So you kind of don't want to think about that because you'll never want to do it. So yeah, simple jobs can still turn around to be a nightmare, if that makes sense. And just double check everything afterwards, you know, make sure you've what I do, and you see it in my videos, even a simple job like a brake job, before I put the wheel back on, I will go through. I might not show it in the videos, I think I showed it on a few, and I will say, right, I've tightened that, and I'll go through all the bolts that I've loosened. You can mark them with Tipp-Ex and stuff if you want, so you know you physically tightened it. And I did show a video ages ago where I did a brake job, and I went back and I found an issue when I went back from the brake job. One of the little springs just came out of the little anti-rattle springs came out, and it just popped out through the caliper. So I went back and I fixed it, but I showed that on the camera. So just little things like that, just go back on everything you do, you know, even if you have to, you know, think you've tightened the bolt 3 times, go back and just do it, because then you'll know you're fine, and then you won't really make any mistakes. But we all make mistakes, not everyone shows them. I show them, but not every YouTuber does. Even when I drop the engine on that car, and yeah, you know, a lot of people give, oh, you shouldn't use seatbelts. Seatbelts aren't very strong, and these seatbelts, they're so strong they'll pick up cars. It was nothing to do with the seatbelt. The seatbelt didn't give way. It's just I didn't have it on the hook properly, and as I turned it just slipped off. The seatbelt didn't actually break, the knot didn't come loose. It was completely my fault. But when you see people say you shouldn't use seatbelts and you should do this and you should use chains and all this, it's funny because most industries now are coming away from chains and metal rope because it's too dangerous. And it's not, you know, there's rope out there now that is stronger than chains ever will be. You know, look at big cruise liner ships, you know, that they a lot of them use ropes, not chains anymore, because when a chain snaps, which it can do obviously, it whips, and it, you know, that chain can do a lot of damage, where a rope doesn't do as much damage. Don't get me wrong, you don't want to get hit by it either, but it's less of two evils. And yeah, but the old YouTube experts are always out there. That was just bad luck, mate. Yeah, it was, but it was my own stupid fault as well. I was rushing. I was kind of pissed off. I couldn't really be asked to do the job. I had other things going on, you know, moving sheds and everything. So it was kind of a perfect storm, but still, it was my own fault. And I put my hands up to it and I left it in the video. I could have edited it out. You would have never have known. But you know, I don't see the point in doing that. You might not know, but you'll see once you're used to a job in any field, whether it's mechanics, whether it's whatever it is, when you watch a YouTube video and you know what you're watching that video and you know what it's about, whether it's about anything, and you're in that industry and someone has made a mistake and edited it out, you can tell. The normal person might not be able to tell, but when you're in that particular industry, like I've seen loads and loads of videos where I know the person has edited something out because they didn't want to show it for whatever reason, whether they made a mistake, whether something happened. There's loads of reasons for it, but you can tell. and it's quite funny, really. Seatbelts I use to pick up cars. Yeah, seatbelts. I tell you, seatbelts are so strong. People just don't realise. Going to moving oil, some on a Peugeot. The weekend specs, big end bearings, 2,000 revs when under load. If they are badly scored, what would you suggest? Scrap the engine. I mean, it just depends. Because if they're badly scored, you can get oversized bearings, and then you can get the crank grinded down and get oversized bearings. But you have to weigh up what other damage is done to the engine, or what is, if there's other things wrong with the engine, is it going to be cheaper to repair that engine, or is it going to be cheaper to get a second-hand one? If you get a second-hand one, you don't really know still if it's good. There could be an issue with it. So a lot of the times, in the perfect world, it's always best to rebuild the engine you've got, because then you know exactly what you've done to it. But it all comes down to time and money in the real world, and for most cases, from a garage point of view, if an engine is badly damaged, for the customer, it's normally cheaper to get a second-hand engine, because, for example, if you have to get oversized bearings, and I'm just talking from my experience in Ireland, if I have to get oversized bearings and get work on the crank, I know I can put an engine in that 2 or 3 days quicker than I can get all the work done and replace it. So I have to weigh up, is the customer going to be out with the car for potentially a week, 2 weeks, or do they get a second-hand engine which potentially has problems, because you just don't know, and they can be away within a couple of days. So it's tricky. If I was doing it for myself, my own car I was going to keep, I would always rebuild it. But for customers, it's so tricky. This is what people don't realize when they see YouTube. Oh well, I do this and I do that. Yeah, you're doing it on your own car. It's different. When you're working for a customer and they're paying you money, you have to be careful, because you can make a mistake and it's your reputation on the line. And especially in like rural places, they need the car. So to say your car's going to be down for 2 weeks, most people just can't, they just can't live without a car. So if you say, well, look, I can put an engine in, but it can only take me 2 or 3 days, most people are just going to say put the engine in, because the price is going to be quite close to each other. They might pay a little bit more, but they're going to get the car back in a quarter of the time. So it's awkward. And it's only when you kind of are in that situation and that you understand, and it's only when you run a garage you'll understand these things. That's why when you see the comments, they just don't understand it. It's difficult to kind of get that across. Seatbelts must be rated in tons of force, designed to take a crash. Exactly. Seatbelts are so strong, especially, well, and anyway, they're just so strong. And an engine isn't heavy. Most engines are just not heavy, and a seatbelt can easily take the weight, easily. And like I said, it wasn't the seatbelt broke, the knot didn't go. It was my own fault for putting it on the hook. The way I had it on the hook, I had one at the bottom here, now the other one quite close, and as I turned it, it just exactly did that. It just slipped off. So nothing broke in that sense. It was just, I wasn't really feeling it. I wasn't feeling doing the job. Let's put it that way. Jay, I'm good. How are you? Engine replacement's probably better. Getting a part for my breakers. Used engine, seeing parts covered. Yeah, it just depends. Like I said, it just depends on the engine. It depends on the customer. It depends on the car. It just, like for example, if you're going to be getting an engine has issues, like the BMW chains and stuff issues and stuff like that, you buy a second-hand engine, you're going to mostly run into the same issues again. So if you rebuild it, you've rebuilt it with all new stuff, which is most probably better. But in Ireland, it's going to take a lot longer to do that, just because of trying to get parts and stuff. And you know, even a simple thing of getting the crankshaft done, I know the guy I go to, who is really good, who I got all the work done with my Cosworth engine. He's normally booked up for at least a week, maybe even more. So even though it might only take him a couple of hours to physically do the crankshaft, I might have to wait at least a week and maybe a week and a half for him to even get near it. So then you've got a car down, you know, possibly over 2 weeks. Not because it takes 2 weeks to do it, obviously, but just because once you have to get parts and stuff in, and once you start looking at oversized bearings and stuff like that, depending on who you get them from, they don't necessarily always work, and you know, it can be difficult to try and get oversized bearings for certain cars if they're not popular. There's just so many issues it runs into, just so many issues. John, how are we doing? I'm not going to be staying for too much longer. I'll be going shortly, but I said I'll just quickly come in and say hello. On a 1.7 Astra with extended crank when hot, crank at around 200 RPM, goes down. I don't know why the chat doesn't sound full on. And the root voltage drop test, starter and leak off test, any other test you would do. Well, what error codes have you got? Have you checked any error codes? Have you checked any live data? Have you checked fuel pressure? That's what I would be checking. Live data, seeing what your fuel pressure is like when you're cranking. That's the first thing you need to do. And if the problem is, if it's a long crank and it's fuel related, you're not going to see it with your eyes. You just won't. You're gonna need an oscilloscope, because if it's slightly, you know, if it takes a second or 2 seconds extra to build, you won't see that on live data, where you'll see it in an oscilloscope. It'll be too quick to see on live data. But I would check fuel pressure and stuff like that first. But you're gonna struggle to see that on live data, unfortunately, without an oscilloscope, if it is fuel related. But I mean, it could be loads of things. Could be bad earth. Could be a lazy starter motor when it gets hot. The starter motor could be a bit dodgy. The battery could be a bit dodgy once, you know, the heat soak in the engine. You know, the heat affects a lot of things. Heat affects a hell of a lot of things. Would you recommend a 2013 Audi A4s? No. No. Well, I mean, look, it depends. I mean, it's just the reason why I wouldn't necessarily recommend them is just because they're expensive to fix. Every car has its problems. It's not that they're a bad car, and it's not as if there's another car out there which is better, but there is other cars out there which are cheaper to fix. That's the key. Yes, they're a lovely car to drive once they're all going, but to fix them, even to do simple things like suspension, because of the way the suspension works with all the different suspension arms on them, they're just expensive. They're just expensive to run. I only have a single channel. No, a single channel will be fine if it's fuel related, but only if it's struggling to build up the pressure. You could have an issue with the injectors. You know, the heat soak, if it's to do when the engine is warm and heat soak, it could be quite difficult to find, because you're going to have to monitor every kind of sensor individually. It could just be difficult to try and find. But if your fuel pressures are even slightly dropping, then I would be looking at the fuel system first, injectors, and stuff like that first, before you kind of go further. But with a issue like that, it's going to be quite difficult to find. You know, it's not going to be one of them things where you're going to find quite quickly. You're going to have to do a lot of tests, I would say, unless something completely obvious sticks out, you know, where what I suggest you do is get a load of live data up, not too much, so it, you know, the refresh rate is terrible. Start the engine cold, you know, monitor just even, you know, the MAF sensors and stuff like that, just the normal kind of stuff. Monitor your fuel pressures, let it heat up, let it go through a heat soak, turn it off, and monitor them same sets of things again and see, you know, if there's a slight difference. You know, maybe the sensor's not reading what it should be straight away, it kind of jumps, and stuff like that. And it's always good to try and monitor sensors in a graph rather than just like the analog sensors, because the problem is if it's slightly dropping, you might not see it with a graph. You're going to see it kind of peak and trough, and you know, if it drops out and stuff like that. So a graphing can normally be a little bit better to work on. Right, what I'm going to do is, because my phone keeps ringing, so I'm going to have to go. I said I'd just quickly pop in and say hello, so I'm going to head off, and hopefully now the sun's coming out again, which is really pissing me off. It's looking black over there now, but the sun's popping out, which is annoying. So anyway, I hope everyone's having a great time and enjoying the rain, because I know I'm enjoying the rain, and we'll speak to you later. Sorted!